Today on Legally Us, Real Housewives of New Jersey's Louis' ex-fiance filed a restraining order amid harassment complaints. Plus, David Beador and ex Leslie Cook filed restraining orders against each other. And Zolciak-Biermann claims kids need protection from abusive Kim Zolciak. And YNW Melly murder trial gets underway while Kevin Costner's wife will not vacate their home. We got that plus so much more on today's Legally Us. Everyone, welcome to Legally Ask. I'm Christina. That's, of course, Neama Rahmani, President and CEO of West Coast Trial Lawyers. Hi, Neama. How are you?
Great, Christina. How's it going?
Good. We have a lot of housewives restraining order news this week, so let's get right into it. So Louis from the Real Housewives of New Jersey has been hit with a restraining order from his ex-fiancée, Vanessa Reiser, who claimed that he harassed her. So Reiser's attorney, Douglas Anton, alleged that Louis attempted to intimidate the therapist who specializes in narcissistic abuse. He told Us Weekly the allegation is that Louis hired Richard Bodidal's private investigation company to place his documented employee, Elaine Boxer, as a fraudulent undercover covert plant using the fake name Elena Berkenheimer to stalk, harass, and otherwise appear as a patient of his client under false pretenses. He claims that this patient visited Reiser 3 or 4 times, noting that she strangely asked about the psychologist's past relationship with Louis. And then the protective order, which was allegedly deemed confidential by the court, per Anton, was ultimately sought out of fear. Louis, who, of course, is married to Teresa Giudice, has not addressed the claims. But according to Anton, Louis and Vanessa last had contact in 2021. So how much trouble could Louis be in if this is true, if he hired a person to pretend to be a patient to get information out of this woman?
I think Louis is actually going to be okay. This is shady. It may not be right, but I'm not sure it's illegal. Generally speaking, people can lie and people can engage in deceptive tactics to get information. Even police officers, they can lie to get information. So to the extent that there's an investigator or there's a plan who's there trying to fish for info, I think Louis is probably going to be okay. And there's certain instances where the conduct may be fraudulent and may be unlawful. But if you don't extract money or anything of value and you're just getting information, probably not going to be unlawful in most states.
Interesting. So you can hire a private investigator to plant a patient and you could be okay. Because during the Real Housewives of New Jersey finale as well, a lot of other people on the cast were saying that Louis reached out to their kids and, hired this private investigator to get some more information. But what he is doing is totally illegal.
Yeah, people can always ask for information, right? I mean, you don't have to provide it, and then you can ask, even using these types of deceptive means. But, being deceptive, again, absent some sort of fraud or something where you're trying to extract something of value, generally not going to be unlawful. Now, there's certain instances where there's a special relationship and you can't do these types of things, but, there really usually is not that type of relationship between someone and their ex.
Right. So the woman that they allegedly had as the patient, would she be involved in this as well, since she may have been paid by this private investigator to do this?
Potentially, the judge would grant this type of restraining order and prevent any type of contact. But absolutely, you can't contact someone through an intermediary, through an investigator, through a fake patient. All that would be off. But absent some sort of protective order or some other legal reason why this can't happen, it's fair game.
Yeah. So do you think that she will be granted this restraining order? Since is this considered harassment then, or is this just somebody trying to get information?
It's not your typical harassment. And again, harassment's like, you call someone repeatedly, show up at their house, their place of work, that type of thing. Trying to get information through a private investigator usually isn't considered harassment because the court says, well, you're providing the information voluntarily. Now, of course, if you say, no, I don't want to see this person, I don't want to see the patient, I don't want to see the investigator, I don't want to see my ex, and they continue to show up, then yes, that could be considered harassment.
Crazy. So scary, though. It really is. All right, moving on to another restraining order. So David Beador and his ex, Leslie Beador, have each filed restraining orders against one another amid their very contentious divorce. So Leslie filed a temporary protective order against David on Friday, June 9th. And she alleged that he was physically abusive towards her, their children, their pets. And then she later went on to say that they share a 2-year-old daughter, and that she claims in her documents that he destroyed her property and he threatened her. So David has not publicly addressed her claims, but he filed his own protective order on behalf of himself and their daughter, saying that, and he requested in his motion that the court denies Leslie and instead grant his request. And he claimed that her petition was purely retaliatory after he filed for divorce, which he asked for legal and physical custody of the toddler. So where will a judge side in this case, since both of them are filing pretty much the same thing?
Yeah, lots of accusations going back and forth. And this is why they pay the judges the big bucks. He or she's going to have to decide who's telling the truth and who's not. And this is probably one of the nastiest divorces we've covered here on Legally Us. I mean, from my hometown of Orange County, these two had to actually exchange the kids at the Laguna Beach police station. I mean, that's how bad things are. So apparently law enforcement has seen some of this improper behavior, but it's going to be a tough one because obviously the divorce has gotten nasty. There's all sorts of accusations which may or may not be true, and a judge is going to have to sort through all this.
Yeah. So since they are both asking for the TROs, will one eventually be granted since they both do want the same thing?
Potentially one could be granted or none or even both. I mean, the problem with both is whenever you're dealing with kids and custody issues, judges are going to be more hesitant to grant these types of restraining orders because they may say, hey, is this really about keeping my ex away or is this about getting full and complete custody of the kids?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and how does the judge decide in this case who the daughter then stays with? Because they both have it seems like damning accusations against one another.
Yeah, it could be the daughter stays with mom, stays with dad, or even a relative if it gets really bad. That's when the kid is taken away from both parents because the accusations are so serious. And if there's violence, that puts the kids at risk as well. So this is one of those questions of fact that really, a judge needs to decide, hey, who's telling the truth and who's not. It's really a credibility determination. Now, if you have witnesses, if you have surveillance, you have evidence and those types of things, that may help in these types of situations.
Mm-hmm. All right, moving over to another mess of a divorce that has to do with credibility as well. So we've talked about this one, Biermann and Kim Zolciak. So Kroy believes that his 4 minor children need protection from quote unquote abusive Kim Zolciak, and he is now asking the court to provide them with a legal guardian. So he filed new court documents, and in it he claims that Kim has been abusive toward him with little concern if the children are present. He further states that he fears his estranged wife, who is set to make a cameo on The Real Housewives of Atlanta later this season, will use the show to discuss her divorce and expose the children to behavior that is not beneficial for their mental health and well-being. As a result, Kroy officially requested the court appoint a guardian ad litem for the children and to represent their best interests amid their parents' ongoing custody battle. She released a statement basically saying that this is not true and that, he is putting their children's mental health at risk by talking about this. This also comes as Kroy hasn't paid anything in months to BMW because he leased a 2020 Rolls Royce. And he said that he is about thousands and thousands of dollars in lease money that he has not paid for. So will a judge grant this request? And what exactly is a guardian ad litem?
Yeah, a guardian ad litem is a guardian for a specific purpose, and in this case, to represent the interest of the kids in the family law case. Now, again, a lot of accusations going back and forth. Kroy's asking for a mental health evaluation for Kim. I'm saying she has issues, and we all know that both of them seem to have some financial issues as well. So I could see a judge potentially granting this request because sometimes you want an independent monitor, a third party, someone who has the best interest of the child to make sure that they're being taken care of in this mess. Right.
So this is just somebody that kind of represents the kids, not staying with them, just represents the kids.
Yeah, it just represents their interest in court. So it can be everything from an attorney, they call it minors counsel. So if they need a medical issue or there's a school issue, I mean, he or she can represent the children outside of court as well. But it's essentially for the purpose of the proceeding, because really that's really what the standard is, right? It's the best interest of the child. That's what the judge is supposed to make his or her decision based on. So if you have someone, especially when you're dealing with minor children that may not be able to articulate or speak on their own behalf, if you have that adult guardian, someone advocating for them, that tends to be best.
Right. And so can Kroy also request maybe a gag order to be put in place that she does not discuss any of their divorce on the show?
Kroy can, and sometimes judges do grant that because they'll say, you know what, this is not in the best interest of the child for the parents to be discussing the case outside the courtroom. Of course, in the courtroom, anything goes and you can make your arguments, but usually the cases need to be decided based on the law and the evidence in the case in court, not what's said publicly. So a judge may grant that type of request.
Yes. And clearly they're having some big financial issues. Like we said, he is, in back payments on his car. They're living in this home that may have gone in foreclosure. What are you surprised that the house isn't put on the market yet and that they're still living together under these circumstances?
Yeah, I'm surprised. Obviously, I don't know their financial condition, but if you look at the reports of gambling issues and all this debt that's being reported, I think it's just a matter of time before the house gets foreclosed on if they can't get caught up or, use the redemption remedy that you can to sort of save your house before it goes into foreclosure.
Right. So you feel like both of them will probably have to file for bankruptcy as well?
Potentially, yes. I mean, foreclosure will get the house, but that doesn't mean that creditors can't go and get what's called a deficiency judgment, go after them personally on top of the house. And obviously, if you start getting those types of judgments against you, they may have no choice but to go into Chapter 7 or Chapter 13 bankruptcy.
Interesting. All right. Well, speaking of housing disputes, so Kevin Costner has reportedly taken legal action to get his estranged wife, Christine, out of their shared home. So he filed documents that claimed that she is refusing to vacate their home. And he noted that the former couple's prenup states that she has 30 days after filing of the divorce to move off their property. So according to Kevin, the former model is allegedly using the situation to make him agree to various financial demands, said that he would contribute as part of his child support obligations $30,000 per month for a rental house and is willing to advance another $10,000 for her moving costs. As we know that in May, we confirmed that they ended their marriage after 19 years. It seemed like he was kind of blindsided by this whole thing. But will she have to vacate the property since she did sign this on their prenup, a number of years ago?
Potentially, yes. If a judge rules that prenup agreement is enforceable and valid, then what the judge will order is that, the title and possession should belong to Kevin alone, and she'll have to vacate the property. It's no different from an unlawful detainer or any other type of eviction type proceeding. Once a judge determines that, the tenant or anyone else has no legal right to be there, then they can be removed. And if they don't comply, then even sheriffs can get involved.
Right. Does a prenup ever expire? I mean, they've been married for 19 years. Do you ever have to go and amend it throughout the years? Since, things change over the course of almost 20 years.
Potentially, yes. There's certain things you can contract around and certain things you can't. Sometimes parties will have a post-nup. They'll either revise the prenup or will just come up with a new agreement altogether. When it comes to child support, generally, you can't include that in a prenup because you can't contract away the children's right to support. But when it comes to the adult, the spouse, whether it's spousal support or living arrangements or separate property or community property or division of marital assets, most of the time, if it's not an unconscionable agreement, that means it's arguably fair. Both spouses have the right to consult with legal counsel and make an informed decision. Oftentimes, courts will enforce those prenuptial agreements.
Interesting. All right, let's shift gears again a little bit because rapper YNW Melly appeared in a Florida court for the first day of his trial for the alleged murder of his two friends. He pleaded not guilty back in 2019, but this is just getting underway. He may face the death penalty if he is found guilty of first-degree murder. So in the opening arguments, his lawyer, David Howard, said that the prosecution's investigation has been incompetent and incomplete, and that his client had no reason to kill his friends. So prosecutors presented the case they put forward upon the initial charges in 2019 that he shot and killed two of his friends in South Florida, and then they staged the crime scene to look like a drive-by shooting. They stated that they have surveillance video of him and another person, as well as the two victims in a car, and that there was a lot of evidence, bullet casing in the car, to indicate that the four men were together that night. So how does the defense approach a case like this when there is a lot of evidence, but they are still maintaining their innocence?
Yeah, this is a tough case, a potential death penalty case. So obviously, it seems, at least according to the surveillance, that YNW Melly was at the scene of the crime, right? So, what the defense is trying to do is go on the offense and attack the law enforcement investigation in this case, say that it was sloppy, say that it was a rush to judgment. This is something that good defense lawyers typically do, so I'm not surprised to see it in a case like this. Yeah.
Do you think that that's probably the best and maybe only strategy they have going into this, since, like we said, that there's a lot of evidence showing him at the scene?
I think so. I mean, obviously, in a case like this, defense is saying, look, these were all friends. Like, why would you kill your friends? The prosecution is saying, well, This was about money. So motive isn't an element that the prosecution has to prove, but jurors are always going to ask themselves, why would someone kill two other people? So the state of Florida really needs to put forth a good theory as to why the rapper would do so if they're going to get a guilty verdict.
Right. Do you think that if he is convicted, have a guilty, that he will face the death penalty?
I think so. And this is a fascinating case from a legal reason for this reason. So after Nicholas Cruz, the Parkland school shooter, was not sentenced to death because there were a couple jurors that didn't support the death penalty in that case, Governor DeSantis and the Florida legislature, they changed the law to not require a unanimous verdict for someone to be put to death. So Florida's new law only requires 8 out of 12 jurors to return a death sentence. This is actually the first case that's applying that new law. So it's going to be interesting because if he's sentenced to death, there are mandatory state and federal appeals. And I can see the Supreme Court hearing this case and saying, hey, this may or may not be constitutional to change the law to require less than a unanimous verdict for a death penalty case.
Interesting. This could be a historic case. We'll have to follow it along as it develops. And of course we will. Neama, thank you so much for your insight and expertise as always. And we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks, Christina. See you next week.
For more news, content, and exclusive interviews, make sure to hit the sub, like, and bell button down below and visit usmagazine.com.